welcome back to Empower Her Health Coaching. And I am here talking about stress today because stress is something that almost everybody struggles with. And I specifically had noticed that I had a lot of stress responses that I did not really like. There's things like shutting down or snapping at loved ones and just not handling the situation very well. And I wanted to build up some resiliency. I wanted to kind of dig deeper and see why I was reacting the way I was reacting and how I could change it and do better in the future and be the person that I truly feel I am and I want to be without letting some of these reactions get in the way of that. And so some people call it nervous system rewiring, some of them call it regulating. But what we're going to talk about today does start in the nervous system. And this part is really cool to me because it actually brings this stress reaction into a physiological, actual nerve in our body. It is a brain to body connection that it's called the vagus nerve, and it actually connects our brain to our body. So when we are feeling things, when we are feeling stress, there's also going to be a physical reaction that's going to happen in our body. And a lot of times I just thought stress is not good for our health. And sure, it causes things like heart attacks. Sure, it causes things like ulcers and all kinds of crazy health effects, and it affects our sleep. And I just said, because it's hard, but this is the actual scientific reason why is because of the vagus nerve that connects our brain to our body. And that connection is our nervous system. Specifically, it's called our parasympathetic nervous system. And for those of you who aren't as big of science nerds and psychology nerds as I am, you might not get as excited as I am, and that's okay. But the parasympathetic nervous system is our rest and digest state. That is where we want to be the majority of the time. And yet, the other side of that coin is the sympathetic nervous system, and that is our fight, flight, or freeze system. And that is our response to stress. And that is where a lot of us are living instead of in that parasympathetic nervous system, our rest and digest. So today, what I'm hoping to bring you is a few practices you can use in the moment, those reactive and kind of strategies to help get you back into that parasympathetic nervous system if you feel your fight or flight or your sympathetic nervous system is being triggered. I also want to give you some tools that are going to help you as daily practices, not these huge things, just little tidbits that you can easily add into your day. And honestly, just pick one to start off with that you can easily add into your day to help improve your resilience and make it so that you are going to be in that parasympathetic nervous system more often. And then the last thing I want to cover is kind of a deeper dive and healing some of those deeper reasons why we are having some of those reactions we are having. And so we're going to start off with the reactive things, those strategies we can use in the moment when we notice that the stress is high. What do I do right now? And so some of these things are going to be grounding techniques you can use. Speaking truth to yourself is going to be the first one. So this is something that you can just remind yourself. You are a normal person. This happens to everyone. And you can just say, hey, I'm going to let myself off the hook. It's okay. This emotion is okay. It's not bad emotions, good emotions. They all happen. It is okay to feel this way. And that helps so much because sometimes we have this negative emotion and then we pile guilt on top of it because we feel like we shouldn't have that emotion. So speaking truth. The second one is self-care. Things like going for a walk, taking a shower, brushing your teeth. These are basic things that are taking care of our body that help us get ourselves back into the moment. Affirmations. These are kind of pre-thought of sayings that you have created that are purposeful, that can remind you and bring you back. It can be a word, it can be a phrase. I remember for a while mine was renewed because I was reminding myself, you do not have to react the way that you have reacted in the past. You are renewed. God has renewed you. You are a new person every day. A fourth one is sensory things. This can be a lot easier when you're really getting into that moment. You can notice the things around you. One thing is counting all of the pink dots you see on a sign. It might be smelling an essential oil. It might be just listening to the clock ticking, listening to your air conditioner start, noticing these things around you, hearing, smelling, tasting, seeing, noticing. Okay, another one is wiggling in your chair, just physically grounding yourself. It's sensory. So these are going to be things you can do in the moment a lot more easily. Deep breathing is another one, and this is one that it's through your nose is actually the best way to do this because it's more efficient breathing. And so doing that, just a deep breath in and out, is so powerful. This is something I taught my 4-year-old, not even 4-year-old, and she will say when she is getting panicked, she will say, "I need breaths," and I'm like, yes, I am so happy you were learning this before I did. But deep breathing, but for some of us, it's a pretty intense reaction, and we have a physical feeling in our body. For some of us, it's in our chest. Me, it goes to my voice box. So if I'm nervous or I'm feeling that stress response and I'm talking in front of people, it's super embarrassing because my voice will get shaky, and it's a little, but some people actually cry. So I'm glad I don't cry, but that is a stress response. Those are natural things that happen when that's our physical response to stress, because our brain and body are talking to each other, and that stress is making a physical reaction happen in our body. And when we notice these physical reactions, that is when we can use some of these techniques. But if you feel like you have to dispel it, one thing that works for me, because I am one of those people that is, they say there's skunks and turtles. I am a skunk. And in some situations I am a turtle and I'll stick it down deep, but usually instead of going into my shell, I will spray it everywhere. And so I feel like this need to dispel my stress. And so what works for me is I tighten my fist as hard as I can, and I flex. And once I feel some fatigue setting in and I feel like I've put all the energy I can into it, I take a deep breath in. And when I exhale, I release. And I just feel this sense of calm. And it's crazy that I just needed this physical thing that needed to happen. Going for a walk is another way to get that physical energy out of your body. And so these are some in the moment. I think the sensory, the breathing, and those physical, the fist clenching are things that work. Counting can work as well, but hopefully from those techniques, you can pick one and start with one, because if you're trying too many things, then what happens is you forget them and they're not going to work as efficiently. But if you pick one and you practice it, even in the small moments, then in the bigger moments, you're more likely to use them. And with all of these things, it's going to take practice. It's going to take time. And so don't think, oh, I picked a technique, now it's cured. No, we're going to go a layer deeper. And so these are the reactive strategies. Next, we're going to talk about proactive strategies. And the name of this is actually vagal toning. We are improving the tone of our vagus nerve, meaning we are making it so that our parasympathetic nervous system is more likely to kick on. It is going to be more reactive. It's going to help us out a lot more. But a lot of us, our vagal tone is not doing so good. So that means that our parasympathetic nervous system is not engaging as it should, because we are spending so much time in that fight or flight or freeze, that sympathetic nervous system, and we're not giving ourselves enough time in that parasympathetic nervous system. So these proactive strategies are going to be small ways that you can purposely get into the parasympathetic nervous system when you are in a good place, when you're just going through your normal routines. And so there's quite a few of these that I can go through for you. And so breath work is one of these. So this is, there's box breathing, which is in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. And you go through that box of in, hold, out, hold. And that's one way you can practice breath work. If you are in the moment and you are breathing, I wanted to add that too for the reactive. Your inhale should be shorter than your exhale. And that is one thing that kind of gets you from that hindbrain, that reactive state, to your command center and more of the thinking brain. But yes, breath work is one. Cold exposure is another. This can be, some people do a bowl of ice ice water and they stick their face in it for 15 to 30 seconds, and they do that like 5 times. Or they do a cold shower, which you can't do in Arizona unless it's winter, but they do a cold shower, and 30 seconds to 3 minutes of, I think it's 3 minutes, that sounds kind of long though, in that cold shower to end their shower. And that's another way. It kind of makes our body a little bit more resilient, because we have to kind of withstand that cold for a while, and afterwards it's forcing us to stay calm in kind of a stressful situation. So it's kind of cool how that works. Exercising is another. Just basically exercising is going to make it does raise our cortisol, but afterward we're going to have all of those happy endorphins that our brain is releasing. Is going to help us, our resilience. Laughing is another one. So our vagus nerve is actually connected to a lot of our major organs. So vocal cords, you're going to notice, are actually involved in a lot of these. It's connected to our heart, it's connected to our diaphragm, it's connected to our digestive system. So all of these, you're going to notice, are going to be things that are kind of associated with those main body organs. And so it's kind of cool how we can improve it by doing these things. Meditation is another one. So just purposefully relaxing, clearing our mind, and putting ourselves into that parasympathetic nervous system. Probiotics are actually proven to help with vagal toning. So we're improving our gut health. And because it's connected to our vagus nerve, it's going to improve our vagal tone. Singing and humming is another one. I've noticed that is huge for me. Humming while I'm cooking breakfast. That's a great one. It's super easy to add in. Laughing is actually another one. We are using those vocal cords. Gargling. So you brush your teeth, at the end you gargle. You use those vocal cords. Massage is another one. So this is very sensory. Very much it's going to be putting you in that rest and digest, that parasympathetic nervous system. And then connection with others is another one that puts us at ease. It uses a different kind of our brain, and human connection is just very powerful for our stress response. It helps remind us that we are not alone. And again, it's almost like speaking truth. You're not the only one. We're in a community. You're not alone. And so all of those are going to be daily routines, some proactive strategies that you can use to kind of increase the resilience of your nervous system and improve your vagal tone. Basically, make it so that you're not always in that stressed state, and you can more easily return to the parasympathetic and the rest and digest. Now, the final thing that we're going to be talking about is some of the deeper healing. And for this, a licensed therapist is going to be your best bet to take you through these things, especially if you have a diagnosed, any kind of mental health diagnosis. And this is something that you can do on your own. And this is, I got this book, it's called The Shadow Work Journal. And I think this was one that I absolutely loved. I think it really helped me personally, and it's where I got a lot of this information. I also listened to a podcast called Regulate and Rewire, and I'll make sure to link both of these below. But that's where I got a lot of this information, and some of it I knew from psychology courses, some of it were taken from these resources, but I think those are going to be, if you want to further your learning, both of those are going to be great. And the journal and the podcast are going to help you with your daily practices too, and learning more and kind of being more in that world, so you can be made more aware of where you're at. Now, this deeper healing. So the shadow work journal. Shadow work, I was kind of like, what does that mean? Because that sounds kind of hokey. It sounds like I'm going to be doing something with like spirits or something. But really, what it means is basically you are just confronting the darkness within you. Because oftentimes we're told to ignore that. We're told just focus on the good, keep going forward. And I think the quote by Carl Jung, who is the creator of shadow work, was, we are only as strong as our darkest shadow. So until we face our shadows and bring them into the light, we're never going to grow. And I was just like, yes, I am feeling that 100%, because as much as I try to grow, as hard as I try to work, if I don't confront the darkness and I don't deal with some of these things that are causing these reactions and maybe some of these mental messages that are just degrading and not helpful to my personal growth, until I confront these things, I am not going to grow as a person. And so, with that said, some of these practices are, they can definitely really trigger some things and bring up past things. And so those grounding techniques, those reactive techniques that we are talking about, are really good to do before and after you are doing some of these healing techniques and diving deeper, because it brings you back to reality. It reminds you you're not the only person that has these shadows. Every single person has shadows that they need to bring to the light and connect with the light side of them, and then they will feel like a whole person. And reminding yourself that every single person goes through that. Some of those other grounding techniques, just those self-care things to bring you back to the moment, sniffing those essential oils, those sensory stimuli, doing some of these things before and after can definitely bring you back into the present and not have you dwelling on some of these things that you might be kind of taking you down a darker path, because it is your darkness and it can be really heavy. Now, the first thing to do is kind of dig into your shadows. You can notice what your shadows are, because sometimes we've ignored them for so long. We don't know them very well. We need to kind of get to know them a little bit before we're going to heal them. And so one way is noticing your judgments of others, whether it be good or bad. If you notice a really strong reaction to someone and you're like, whoa, I can't believe they're doing that, this makes me not like them very much, it's usually because you're noticing a characteristic that you see in yourself that you really do not like about yourself. So that is a great clue right there. Another thing might be you and someone else, you are reacting in a way that you're like, oh, I'm so jealous. That is so amazing that you can do that. I don't feel like I could ever do that. I'm very envious of that. And that's because that is a characteristic you wish you had. So pay attention to those judgments that you have of others. Another one is notice when you are being triggered. What are some of your triggers? For me, it is if I am being called lazy in any way, because, and I know it's because being lazy was just like not allowed in my house growing up. It was something like it was frowned upon, and hard work was praised, and which is a great thing. But if I even sniff that I'm being called lazy in any way, I react to that. And that is one of my specific triggers. So noticing some specific triggers like that will be really helpful. And also noticing the pattern of them. Is it late at night when I'm already really tired? Is it right after I hang out with a friend that kind of sets me off? It might be different people. It might be a time of day. It might be a location. Those things are very important to notice too. Noticing some of these things. And I think the biggest one is the past experiences. And they can be from childhood, but like some of us have some pretty intense stuff that happened in adulthood too, that we are still kind of working through. It might have been high school. Like, how hard was high school? How many things happened then that were just like very traumatizing? So past experiences definitely shape who we are. The reason why a lot of our childhood experiences affect us so much is because our brain is still developing, and some of those experiences are just wired in. And when they get wired in from an earlier age, they've also been with us for longer, and they have gotten our neural pathways. If they get carved deeper and deeper and deeper every time we believe something or every time we do something or react a different way. And so in order to change them, it's going to take a lot more work than, maybe a past experience I had a couple years ago. And that's going to be something that's going to be easier to change because that neural pathway isn't going to be carved quite as deep. So noticing, okay, some of these things definitely shaped who I am. If I was going to ask you about your childhood and some of the tough situations, you might be able to pull one up right away. That definitely is kind of related to your stress reactions. Now, what do we do about it? We are diving deep. We are diving into some of these things that are tough. It is darkness. How do we bring these things to the light? Well, first of all, You are asking yourself these things when you are in a good place, when you are able to confront them. And there's 3 different ways that you can kind of bring them to the light. One of them is EFT tapping, which I am not as familiar with. I have not practiced it myself very often, but it is something that a lot of people swear by. And it's basically you're using 2 of your fingers to tap on different points on your body as you are telling yourself truth. It might be repeating something. It might be just saying, telling yourself the true story instead of the story that you have been telling yourself in your head. The second one is inner child affirmations. If you are able to pinpoint something like the laziness thing, for me, for instance, if you're able to pinpoint something from your childhood that really it was tough, and it is something that you're still telling yourself in your head, pick the opposite, pick the truth, make an affirmation of that. So you are not lazy, rest is good. That's something that I have to remind myself. It's okay to rest, right? Laziness is, you are not lazy. You need to rest. Rest is important. And so that's something that, those affirmations, you can remind yourself when you notice yourself getting into those places. And again, you have to practice this over and over and over again. We are carving a new neural pathway into our brain, so it's going to take time. And that other pathway is always going to be there. But we can make it so that it is not as easily our natural reaction as we carve this new pathway and we tell ourselves the truth and we choose the reaction we want to choose. And the last one is the one that I have definitely been digging into the most myself, is awareness. Being aware of when my body is getting that stress response. Being aware of the situations and the triggers where I normally have these stress responses, and being in that moment and realizing when I'm getting there and using some of those reactive tools in the moment. That right there, I think, it's our awareness is one we should always do, no matter what we're doing with EFT tapping or inner child affirmations, because awareness is what is going to help us instead of us just reacting, exploding, and then being like, I can't do anything. That constant awareness, noticing, because usually a stressor isn't like, bam, it's there. It builds. And noticing it building and dispelling it before it gets to the point of exploding, or noticing when you're at that tipping point and using some of those practices. And so, as it's building, it might be asking for help. It might be leaving the room. It might be walking. It might, using some of those things as it's building, saying no to an event when you're already super busy, and realizing I need rest. I need to take some time. My body is getting to that place. Breathe is always a good reminder. And so I've given you some reactive strategies. I've given you some proactive strategies. I've given you some of those deeper healing strategies that you can use. And I'm very hopeful that by examining your shadows, by doing some of these daily practices, and then by having those tools in the moment, that you will feel yourself being able to change, as I have kind of felt that start to happen for myself. And it's a pretty cool thing that our brain and body are truly connected, and that we can do something about it to change some of those reactions and to change our stress reactions and, become the person that we want to be and be a better version of ourselves. And so I hope you feel empowered. I hope I've given you some tools that you can readily apply to your life. And until next time, be healthy and be well.